You know, I still find it hard to believe that come November we will have ourselves a sequel to one of the most beloved sword and sandal epics of all time. One that most definitely redefined the genre. It's fair to say that many people have a deep emotional connection to Gladiator, myself included, which was released 24 years ago, can you believe it? Lightning in a bottle could best describe much of Ridley's earlier work, and Gladiator is no exception. The motion picture inspired awe and wonder because it took the grandeur of ancient Rome and made it gritty, immediate and visually stunning. They built 1/3 of the Colosseum as part of the film's immense practical sets, and the cast, well, with Joaquin's performance of a villain we love to hate, he brought to life an antagonist who was both pathetic and terrifying with his mix of insecurity, cruelty and lust for power. However, the film's beating heart was undoubtedly Russell Crowe's performance as Maximus, with his personal quest for justice against the backdrop of political corruption in the Roman Empire, which resonated deeply with audiences. Do I even need to mention the music, which brought such emotional wealth to the experience and possibly remains one of the greatest movie soundtracks ever scored? However, before Gladiator, Hollywood had largely fallen out of love with this genre, as although popular during the mid-20th century, it had come to be seen as an old-fashioned, expensive and risky endeavour by the 90s. Well, Gladiator changed the landscape, and when you consider the fact that Ridley himself has stated on record that they practically winged it with a half-baked script, the outcome is quite an achievement, I'd say.
I'm thinking it's lunchtime and we bloody well have done this shot by now.
But that was then, and this is now, and I've spent the last 2 years wondering to myself at various moments, why the hell would they ruin it by making a sequel to an absolute classic that never needed one? Then there is the lackluster title Gladiator 2, which spelt franchise doom in my eyes. But I'm never one to form an opinion strong enough that might stop me from watching a film that has me deeply curious. And the most recent trailer looks very impressive, would you agree? I was rather delighted when they announced that the trailer starts here, as I was becoming deeply confused until then. It's bloody helpful when they do this. The first trailer was equally stunning, but sadly the mood was slightly ruined by the strange choice of modern music playing over it, which felt entirely out of place with its urban vibe. Then there is the mighty tidal wave of early reviews, or rather social media posts declaring that this sequel is the real deal. At first I thought this was just some studio hype promoting another Napoleon ordeal. I mean, Napoleon had its brilliant moments, and the visuals are rarely ever a critique when it comes to Ridley Scott. Still, I felt the film was a little up its own bottom and far too bogged down with the portrayal of his twisted relationship rather than what the man actually achieved in his life. I mean, come on, Napoleon was a romantic, not a cuck. He wanted someone to pursue like the shunned lover, and therefore I was thinking that maybe the script had a modern agenda attached to it, if you catch my drift. And to speak on Napoleon's other main criticism, I actually care very little for historical accuracy in certain circumstances, but that can depend on the film entirely, I suppose. Last of the Mohicans, for example, threw us straight into a behemoth of pivotal historical events, infused with a very passionate and compelling dramatic story. Gladiator took a few more liberties to tell a good story, but both are perhaps my most favourite period piece films. So, although we now have new gladiators to entertain us, will they be wearing the same old sandals, so to speak? I believe Ridley is now 86, and I would love for him to have another big win before we are no longer gifted with his craft. I doubt we will ever see the conclusion of his most recent Alien saga, for better or worse that is, but in my opinion Gladiator 2 needs to be cut from a different cloth. It has to honour its predecessor by living up to its intensely compelling and emotional story, edge-of-your-seat dramatic tension and gloriously spiteful villains to make us wholeheartedly root for our new protagonist. But on a side note, there is something that made me laugh that has undoubtedly been caused by the trailer. The first thing that pops up on Google when you type "Did the Romans" is now "Fill the Colosseum with water and sharks." Well, they unquestionably filled it with water for a mock naval battle, but sharks? Apparently not. They used other deadly sea creatures and land animals from Africa, however. Now, how are they going to pull off the rhino? Sorry, that sounded a bit gross. When Lucius fights the rhino, will it add an unnecessary absurdity to the grim and gritty tone we expect? I'm suddenly reminded of the only thing I hated about Lord of the Rings trilogy, when Legolas fought the elephant. It just took me out of the film for a brief moment. But I expect we will see plenty of nods to our heroic general who once defied Rome, as there seems to be a lot of flashbacks to a young Lucius, at least, and Maximus was his father after all. Now, many people are saying that Ridley hasn't had a major hit since The Martian, and that is reason enough for concern. I get it. The problem with this way of thinking is that The Last Duel was a phenomenal film, but fair enough, it could have done better at the box office. This may have been because of its unusual multi-perspective approach to telling a narrative, which was quite a dark and disturbing one at that. However, the film was bold and very typical of Ridley's A-game, and I loved it. Ridley is simply the best at bringing to life historical films, whether it's medieval Europe or ancient Rome. It's also worth mentioning that the man releases a genre-defining, critically acclaimed film every decade, it appears. In the 70s it was Alien, 80s Blade Runner, 90s Thelma and Louise, Gladiator came next, and then The Martian. So we're roughly due for another banger, right? I won't read out all of these glowing comments, I'll leave them on screen for you guys. But my god, are you ready to be entertained once more by the sounds of it? But seriously, it is essential to remember that this flurry of early reviews from those lucky enough to have seen it already are certainly not reviews. It's more like overhyped and giddy initial reactions from people that may be slightly biased, hoping to remain in the studio's good graces. For the most part, the talk is all about Oscar buzz for Denzel, captivating visuals and stellar performances across the board. To me, this is all obvious stuff that was pretty evident from the trailer, I would have thought. So there are no arguments there. And I'm certainly not going to deny that it is a promising sign that the studio has had the confidence to show off the film a month before release. What does interest me, however, are the less enthusiastic comments, as you can always decipher a little more truth from the more stable minds and their balanced reactions in these early screenings. Jermaine says Gladiator 2 doesn't quite rise to the greatness of the original, but it's a damn fine sequel with big stakes, a solid story and excellent performances. It's just slightly lacking emotionally. Now, I can get on board with this comment because although it still praises the film and leaves me very excited for November, it also in a single sentence makes real what was my biggest worry. You see, Russell Crowe's intense performance in the original gifted the film with copious amounts of emotional weight. Sure, the feature won awards for its technical achievements such as special effects and battle scenes. Still, the film's heart, which drew in men and women alike, was in its central character, Maximus, as he navigated the timeless themes of power, betrayal, honour and revenge. His journey from general to slave to gladiator and eventually a revolutionary figure really gave the film a thematic depth that resonated with audiences, and most of us can relate to the timeless struggle between justice and tyranny, of course. Will makes a similar comment, brief but to the point. Gladiator 2 lacks the focus and emotional punch of the original. So I think it's fair to say that we will experience one hell of a ride, but one that somewhat lacks the emotional backbone of its predecessor. If this is the case, then part of me thinks, well, can I blame them? What are the chances of them discovering another Russell Crowe or Joaquin Phoenix in their prime, to make us love and hate with such passion again? I don't know much about our lead, Paul Mescal, who plays Lucius, all grown up and forced to fight as a gladiator to return the glory of Rome to its people from the tyrannical empress. But I will say that what we see of him in the trailer certainly looked and sounded the part.
The odds are always against me.
He just didn't demonstrate enough emotional range to inspire any confidence in me that the sequel could ever equal the soul-stirring richness that was very present in the original. Now, when it comes to Denzel, who is consistently great, I honestly expect nothing less from him here. I'm looking forward to seeing what he'll bring, and I'm curious to know if his character will be reminiscent of Oliver Reed's Proximo, even if Denzel's Macrinus appears more cruel, manipulative, and of higher status, if not nobility, in this film. I also wonder if he'll try to lose the New York accent a wee tad for this one.
I must have power.
But then again, I'm not asking him to put on a proper British accent, which strangely has always been the universal manner of speaking in historical films.
No matter which one comes out alive, you have the power now.
This may be because there is something more neutral sounding regarding the Queen's English, which also helps us perceive class and authority better in films, I suppose. But people are praising Pedro Pascal for showing off his versatility for the big screen, as there is always that lurking danger that when you start to see the same person in so much TV and film, that they might start to become typecast. But nah, he's too good an actor as well. It's wonderful to have Connie Nielsen back playing Lucilla once more, who is, I believe, the only actor returning from the first film. So, with the strength of the film's ability to resonate with audiences emotionally still very much unknown at this point, the villainry is what's left to talk about. This is the real meat and potatoes and a core aspect of any good Roman story. You'll understand if you've ever watched any notable TV series or films based on Rome, like Rome for instance, as these stories always tend to become a breeding ground for treachery and backstabbing. Spartacus dialed this up to 11 in quite a sadistic way, but it was pure entertainment, and I loved every minute of that show. But in the case of Gladiator 2, we have Joseph Quinn and Fred Hetchinger playing both emperors. Thankfully their scenes in the trailer do not disappoint, and they seethe with dangerous quantities of negative traits. From the trailer alone they surface as devious, tyrannical, sadistic, corrupt and merciless. Commodus would be proud. Therefore, where I'm at regarding expectations and excitement levels, I want to be immersed in another grand historical epic that transports me to another place in another time, much in the same fashion Ridley's first Roman adventure was able to do. I'm actually quite giddy about the battle scenes, especially the combat within the Colosseum. If you get a chance to watch some of the behind-the-scenes videos that Paramount Pictures have put out, please do, as they have not been shy in the brutality of war, nor have they skimped on production value and choreography of the fights. I'll link them in the description for you all, but I believe this film will be one hell of a cinematic experience. If the sequel doesn't provide the same levels of emotional connection as the first, then so be it. Take my money anyway. And say what you will about Ridley Scott, but I feel that with particular projects he directs, sometimes he can really knock it out of the park and set a new gold standard while doing it. So please let me know your thoughts down below, because let's be honest, a Gladiator sequel from Ridley Scott himself feels like a historical event in and of itself. I'll certainly be reviewing the film at the end of November, so please make sure to tune back in for that one if you're interested. In the meantime, if you're not entertained, well, go grab yourself a cold one, sit back and relax in front of a good film. Take care and talk soon.